The Paul Leslie Interviews.
Ladies and gentlemen, it is our pleasure to welcome the one and only Otis Williams of The Temptations.
How you doing?
I'm doing great. It's a great honor to talk to you.
Well, same to you, Paul.
Who is Otis Williams?
Well, Otis Williams is just a fortunate young man to be able to do what he wanted to do ever since he was 14 years old, and God has blessed him to be able to sing and perform and hopefully bring enjoyment and pleasure to our fans the world over for 50 years.
I would say I agree with you 100%, except for the word hopefully. There's no hopefully about it, it's definitely.
I always try to keep the eye on the tiger, so, we always try to improve upon oneself.
What was life like growing up?
Oh, well, pretty much just like I would imagine any other kid growing up in Detroit. I was born in Texas and moved to Detroit when I was about 11 or 12 years old and wanted to start singing when I saw the great rock and roll shows that used to come to Detroit when rock and roll was in its infancy, and they used to bring the great rock and roll shows to the Fox Theater. And I would see some of the greats at that time perform. I was mesmerized to see 5,000 plus people at the Fox Theater going crazy over what 4 or 5 guys what were doing on the stage. So that was my catalyst to become a singer.
Tell us about some of those acts. What are some of the groups that stand out in your mind from that time period?
Those days, first of all, I grew up listening to the great gospel singers of that time. My grandmother would have me listening to the great Mahalia Jackson and Clara Ward singers, the Soul Stirrers, the Dixie Hummingbirds. And then when I moved to Detroit, I started watching groups like the Flamingos, the Cadillacs, Frankie Lyman and the Teenagers, the Royal Jokers, Clyde McSpatter, Jackie Wilson, and they were the ones that inspired me to the point of wanting to sing.
I've read that the group, the Cadillacs in particular, were a very big influence on you.
Yeah, Speedo and the Cadillacs. In fact, I often call Speedo from time to time just to check on him and let him know because of what I saw him and his group do. That's a large part by their Temptations because, they were super fantastic on stage. And the late, great Charlie Atkins was responsible for all that wonderful choreography that they were doing. So I give a lot of accolades to Speedo of the Cadillacs for what they did because they left a profound impression upon me.
Did you ever envision that you would have the success in the music business that you have had?
No. When we started out in 1961, we had no inclination that we would become, as they say, as iconic as we are today. All we wanted to do, like most singers at that time, want to, sing, have a hit record, or have as many hit records as you can get, and to make money, and naturally, sing for the girls. But we didn't have any idea 50 years later we would still be around, still being loved, and still winning and making all kind of history, So, no, we didn't have any idea.
A lot of people would be interested to know that the Temptations have been a group for more than 50 years. Why do you think the group has been able to hang in there for so long?
There's a lot of different factors, why we've been able to be around for 50 years. Well, first and foremost, you got to love what you do. And in spite of the losses that I've gone through, I still find it very desirous to be able to get out there and do something that I can do and enjoy doing what I do because, in this here world that we inhabited, there's not too many people that say that they get up and go to work and do what they love doing as long as I've been doing that because a lot of times we hear people complain about the regular 9 to 5 and the whole home syndrome caught up in a certain vacuum of life. And when I break it down, all I have to do is perform an hour and a half on stage every night, and then we have great periods of when we have time off. The only real factor of what we do is the traveling itself. But other than that, when I break it down, it's just an hour and a half of being on the stage, bringing happiness and enjoyment to everybody the world over and getting paid handsomely.
Is it true that before you were called the Temptations, you were called something else?
Before we came to Motown, we were Otis Williams and the Distant. And then we became disenchanted with the label that we were with, a small company called Northern Records. And when we became disenchanted with them, I had met Mr. Gordy at a record hop when he was out with Smokey and the Miracles. And he was impressed with the records that we had. And he said, if you should ever become disenchanted where you are, come see me. I'm starting my own label, which we did. And when we left the label that we were with, the lady said, well, if you're going to leave me, I'm going to keep the name. So she kept the name The Distance, which we said, yeah, well, fine. We're young. We can start all over again. And we were the Elgins for about a couple of weeks until we found out it was another group called the Elgins. A friend of mine, Cornelius Grant, called me this morning and asked about how did the name, came about. And I told him a guy named Bill Mitchell. We were standing out front of Motown Records at the time because we had just signed, but we didn't have the name. And he said, well, what about, Bill Mitchell said, what about the Temptations? And I said, I like that. Let's take that one. And I asked the guy, I said, did they think? And Paul Williams, I never will forget what he said. He said, hey, our name is whatever we make it. So we became the Temptations. And Bill Mitchell hollered up to Motown's legal department and said, put on the contract the Temptations. And here it is 50 years later.
Does that name have any meaning, the Temptations?
Not really. It just sounded good, at the time. And I guess we were trying to get a name for the thing so we could get in there and start recording. But it just had that right sound to the ear, the Temptation. And I guess it was meant for us to have because before we were the Temptation, there was a white group called the Temptation. They had one record out, I think, called Barbara Ann. But we never got any records from them. Just continued on with the Temptations. But it just had the right kind of sound. It wasn't too dramatic, but dramatic enough. And it wasn't too over the top, but just right. So we liked it. And here it is 50 years later. And we're on the name Temptation.
You're listening to our interview with Otis Williams of the Temptations. You've been at this for a long time. What are some of the biggest changes you've seen in the music business?
Wow. Well, the one thing that I've learned about life, music, or anything, the one thing that's constant in life is change. And we've seen a lot of change in music and everything since then. So the one thing that has been the strength for the Temptation is that we've been able to adapt to whatever the musical trends might be. We've always had the kind of voicing in the group that whatever is called for us to be able to sing to keep up with the times and the change of music. The Temps have always had that kind of a flexibility and availability of being able to sing and adapt to the different changes. And when I look back at our repertoire and our catalog, it just proves positive that we've been able to adapt to whatever the changes have been. And the music business has changed dramatically from when we started. But it hasn't changed to the point where it's a great song, regardless of all the different kind of hip-hop, rap, neo-soul, and what have you. Bottom line, and I've seen it enough to prove me right, a great song will stand the test of time. And that is why Motown's catalog, and I won't just say Temptations, but Motown's catalog is being celebrated 50 years, because when you stop and think about it, all those songs that were written back during the 60s all the way up to now have been so celebrated and loved that it's a true testament that great songs will definitely withstand the test of time.
Well, one of the songs that has definitely stood the test of time, The Way You Do the Things You Do. What kind of changes did that song bring for the band?
Well, what it brought about as far as when it became a hit, we started working more on a grander scale. We were a work group even before we started having hit records. But when The Way You Do the Things You Do came out in 1964, it increased our workload tremendously. I mean, we would finish a Motown tour and come right off of that, and a day or so in between, we would start a Dick Clark Cavalcade or Sport tour. We'd leave that, then we would go on our Mary Decay tour at the show at the Brooklyn Fox for 10 days. We'd do that, then we'd come on and do our Irving Fell tour. So it was constant back-to-back work, and then when My Girl was released later on in 1964, that really just took us over the top. Big clubs, Ed Sullivan shows, all kind of popular TV shows, and, so it really just made us work. Our workload just really increased with a quantum leap.
We're talking with Otis Williams of the Temptations. Do you have a favorite song that the Temptations recorded?
Well, first and foremost, I'm a big Temptation fan, just like our fans are. My favorite song, and I have to give credit to Smoking Running White, is My Girl. My Girl first, and then everything else.
When somebody goes to see the Temptations in concert, What do you hope they get from that experience?
Well, what I hope that they get out of the experience of seeing us perform, there was a very popular show that was on during the 70s called That's Entertainment. And when I would watch that show, the thing that, the broadcast that it was showing, I felt that was a very good title, That's Entertainment. And I would like for our fans to always walk away saying, now that's entertainment, because, I don't rain on anybody else's parade, but, we don't walk out with our pants, halfway across our behind or grabbing our crotch and all that. We are from old school to the point of we were taught to be in show business and not have to rely on a hit record. So we were taught the proper etiquette about being on stage and how to carry ourselves when we are off stage, because oftentimes they watch you the most when you're off stage because they know what you're going to do when we're on stage, but what kind of people are we like once we're on stage. So we were taught all of the, things about how to really be a consummate entertainer on and off the stage. So I would like for our fans to always say, after they have seen a Temptation show, going away saying, now that's entertainment. Those guys sing, they perform, they got uniforms, they know how to talk, they carry themselves well. So I'll have to say that's entertainment, to make a long story short.
You recorded and performed with so many people, and not just performing on stage, but also performing alongside of, whether opening or having someone else open for you.
Right.
Who sticks out in your mind the most?
Well, when you have been on the shared stage with as many great artists that we have, it's hard to just single out any one particular, artist. Because I can go back to the days of Jackie Wilson, the days of Gene Chandler, being on the Ed Sullivan Show with a lot of the great acts that was on the Ed Sullivan Show, doing the Hollywood Palace with the late, great Bing Crosby. So our performance with such greats is very wide that I couldn't single out just one individual, because we have been blessed 50 years. We've covered the stage, the great Otis Redding. We've shared stages together. I really wish we could have been on the stage, shared stage with the late, great Sam Cooke. But, aside from some of the names that I mentioned, there's too many names to just single out one. So we just have been a very blessed group to have shared stage with some of the greats. Ray Charles, we've shared stage with Ray Charles. And then when I stop and think about it, it's endless almost.
Amazing. If you could put it into words, what do you like about music?
I can put it in the word quite easily. I have come to realize from experience that music is colorless. Music is boundless. Music has even we've been able to do things with music that politicians have not been able to do with politics in order to preserve civility and what have you. But we have been able to do that through our efforts of music. So music can reach so far and to so many, troubled souls and things that it is just a great form to be part of. Can you imagine this world without music? It would be a huge void. So music is really at the top of the list of just bringing people together, which we've done that. We've seen one time down in the South, quite a few places in the South, where blacks on one side, whites on the other side. Came back to that same place the next year. Blacks and whites were sitting side by side, high-fiving, booty banging. If it wasn't for the sweat that we were perspiring, you would have seen the tears flowing from my eyes. So, music is a strong, strong vehicle for bringing people together.
We're talking with Otis Williams of the Temptations. What is your all-time favorite meal?
My all-time favorite meal?
Yes, sir.
Wow. I don't have no all-time favorite. I love food. I try and watch my diet, but I just can't, I'm a Southern boy, naturally being raised on the, good soul food, that's been the rudiment of my diet, but I tried to change my diet over years because, you have to watch it because, you get fat and, diabetic and all that stuff. So I try and eat light, so I can't think of anything, other than I like food, but I just try and watch my diet.
My last question, very open-ended. What would you say to anyone listening in?
Wow, what I'd like to say to all our fans listening in is that I thank them first and foremost for their love and support. Because of them, we've been able to still be around 50 years later. So I have to give thanks to them, and I also have to give thanks first and foremost to God, because this business of what we do can be such a short-lived business. And so anytime you can last, I would say even 5 to 10 years, that's a milestone. But for 50 years, that's something to really be commended for and about, because we had no idea. And the only reason that we're around is that we still love. I won't say the only reason, but we still love what we do. But we have such a strong fan base that I want to thank our many fans for being there for us. We just always try and give our fans the utmost of what we can do for what we're known for. So I thank our fans first and foremost.
Well, Mr. Williams, thank you so much for joining us on this interview.
Oh, same here.
Thank you so much. Have a good one.
Thank you. Bye.